The Raiders headed back to Cali for training camp, and nobody's talking about it. Why is that? That plus a whole lot more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for July 22nd, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of you, Raider Nation, and my man, Ari. Ari does a fantastic job each and every day, making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, and we're sounding good. We shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254, and we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line if you want to be a part of the show, 707-654-4693. We will get to your calls and texts coming up in segment number 3, a bunch of different subjects as we've had for the last, few weeks. So a lot of really good feedback. We'll do a lot of that coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, I want you to hear some sounds from First Take on ESPN, and I'll be the first to tell you I'm not a First Take guy. It's just not my bag. But on Friday, I was happening to be preparing for my radio show, and they had something on there that was pretty intriguing, and it had to do with the Raiders, had to do with Davante Adams, where he stands as a wide receiver, and Ryan Clark and Harry Douglas, former NFL players, did it at the highest level. They really led the conversation, but I thought it was some really good stuff about Davante, Brock Bowers, the Raiders in general. Just thought it was a good conversation. Again, I don't say that very often when it comes to First Take on ESPN, but this was a really good one. So you'll hear that coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, we'll give you the news and the notes of the day, and it's really all about training camp and where it is in Costa Mesa getting started this week. Excited about that. We'll tell you about it after we tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now, excited about this opportunity, knowing that training camp is right around the corner. As a matter of fact, I'm recording this show on Sunday. This is the last show that I'm doing from Studio Q. I'm actually going to, as soon as I'm done with this, hit the highway and head to Costa Mesa myself for Raiders Training Camp 2024. Very excited about that opportunity. The rookies report today, which is the 21st, and then the veterans are going to report on the 24th, and they're going to report, or 23rd, I should say, excuse me. They're going to report here in the Las Vegas area, Henderson, at Raiders HQ, and then they're going to get on a plane and fly to Costa Mesa for the first day of practice being on the 24th. So again, this is the last show I'm doing from Studio Q. Then I'll be at I'll be at training camp there in Costa Mesa. And I've brought this up before about Costa Mesa and the fact that it's not really being celebrated that the Raiders are going back to SoCal to have their training camp, and why. And I want to say it was a couple months ago not even a couple months ago, maybe it was about a month ago, when I was kind of told by the Raiders when I was over at their building that there's rules and regulations to what they can and what they can't do, what they can and can't promote while they're there in Southern California, because it's still the Rams and the Chargers home territory. So there's a couple of good articles out right now. I know Pro Football Talk, they did one, Mike Florio and company, but Paul Gutierrez did one from ESPN and did a really good job. It's called Raiders Quietly Returning to Southern California for Camp. He goes on to say the Raiders, who called L.A. home from 82 to 94, maintain their massive popularity in SoCal, are heading to Costa Mesa in neighboring Orange County for 18 days of training camp. Veterans reporting Tuesday, breaking on August 9th. But because of NFL policy, the Raiders could not promote their presence. So there's no billboards, no newspaper ads, no radio commercials, nothing. The Vegas media, who I'm part of, can cover camp, but there's no invites for LA or Orange County media. So nobody there that's going to be local is going to be allowed to cover the team. Practices will not be open to fans. There are some VIPs, select season ticket holders and sponsors that have been invited that'll be allowed to be there in Jack Hammett Sports Complex, which is 40 miles south of SoFi Stadium. So he goes on to say, since permanently relocating from St. Louis to San Diego, respectively, the Rams and Chargers share territorial marketing rights to the area. So this is why the Raiders can't promote it. They can't really talk about it. And believe me, we even have rules on what we can say on the radio. But Paul goes on to say, this is just the rule right here. He breaks down the rule. Every club has an exclusive home territory extending 75 miles in all directions from the exterior corporate borders of the city for which it holds a franchise. That's per league policy. If another club holds its preseason training camp within that exclusive territory, then it cannot be marketed locally. So that's basically, say the Packers came to Las Vegas and started training at UNLV, they couldn't promote it, or the Steelers or any other team that might have a pretty big fan base here in Las Vegas, they wouldn't be able to promote it because it's the Raiders' territory, and they have the home territory, which goes 75 miles in all directions. So Paul talked to Mark Davis, and he said, training camp must go on with or without public knowing. We're having camp, and that's where we're having camp. The Chargers and Rams have the ability to block us from promoting. That's fine. Mark Davis also went on to say it'd be nice if all the fans could be there, but whatever. Like I said, the Chargers and the Rams, they have the ability. So, unfortunately, it won't be open to the public. Many people have asked me, how can I get into training camp, and why is it being held this way? That is the reason why, because of the home territory extending 75 miles. Well, I told you that we have rules even on the radio station. Got hit up by the Raiders on Friday to specifically give instructions to all of us that, like myself, JT, Vinny, the Morning Tailgate on Raider Nation Radio 920, what we can and can say as far as promotion. Now, here on the podcast, I can say a whole lot more because, well, the Raiders, they don't have any kind of, they can't say, well, hey, we can't have you promoting that on the podcast. Like, that doesn't matter. The podcast, I can promote whatever I want to promote on the podcast. But, on the radio station, they can say, hey, please don't say this. Please don't say that. So the rules that they put in place for us, check it out. It's fine to state that the team is in Costa Mesa because it's a fact. But aside from that, please refrain from expanding on it. So basically, it's training camp at Costa Mesa. All right, so back to the quarterbacks, right? I mean, really, it's that. No references to fans outside the facility, beautiful weather, glitz and glam of Southern California. If players or coaches expand on their time at Costa Mesa, that's fine, but don't push them on it. The messaging on the reasons for relocating camp is team building, singular focus, and camaraderie. The mild weather is a plus, but not the primary reason for relocating training camp, and the purpose is not directed towards the marketing or promotion of the team in any way, shape, or form. Lastly, it's fair to acknowledge the team's history in L.A., but let's not dwell on the size of our fan base, most popular team in L.A., etc. Essentially, they're approaching training camp as if they're having it in Henderson and HQ. Focus on football and not anything off the field. So, really, the Rams and Chargers, as I mentioned on this show when I first found out about this, really don't like the fact that the Raiders have such a large fan base there in L.A., right? I mean, again, I mentioned if the Packers came to Vegas and started practicing at UNLV, how they technically couldn't promote it. I don't think the Raiders would care if they did promote it, right? Because the Raiders have a huge fan base in L.A., as we all know, right? I mean, the Bay, L.A., they're working on Vegas, but I mean, the Raiders are worldwide, but especially in L.A., where they've obviously been very successful, had championships there. We know about what happens at SoFi Stadium when the Raiders go and take on the Chargers. We know that it's mainly a Raider crowd, even though the Raiders haven't had as much success there at SoFi as they'd like to have. Hopefully that changes this year, but it's so funny to know that the Chargers and Rams are so desperately trying to build their fan base in L.A. They want nothing to do with the Raiders having a fan base and having a presence in L.A. To even do their training camp. But bottom line, Raider Nation knows where it's at, right? I mean, and of course, because the Raiders can't have their fans show up, like it's not an open practice, so that's that. But it ain't going to change who's a fan of what team in L.A. That's the thing that's funny to me. It's like nothing that they can do is going to change the status of how the Raiders are with their fan base in L.A., no matter if we're not allowed to promote it or not. But that is the reason there's not a lot of talk about it. For the radio station, they've asked us not to really dwell on it, especially talk about having the largest fan base. But I will say this. If you happen to call the radio station and say, hey, man, I really love the fact that the Raiders are in L.A. representing, obviously got the biggest fan base in L.A., I can't stop you from calling in and saying what you say, right? So, obviously there's going to be ways around that, but it's wild to me that with training camp getting going, and it is, them getting off campus and getting to LA, it is about getting out of the weather, but it is also about team building. It is also about camaraderie. It is about, having these guys get together and bond on and off the field. Once practice is over, then you go and you're with your brothers there instead of going home to your family, going home to, whatever your situation is here in Las Vegas. Like all that is true, but just to not really be able to expand on it and talk about it really is pretty wild to me. But that's where they stand. That's where it is right now. Again, excited about training camp getting started. First day of practice coming up on the 24th. Coming up in segment number 2, I want you to hear a conversation that was had on ESPN's First Take on Friday. I thought it was really good. Starts out talking about Devontae Adams. It's with Harry Douglas and Ryan Clark, Mike Tannenbaum, Mike T, the former Jets GM, and Christine Williamson. She's actually hosting First Take on Friday, and so you'll hear that conversation. Really good stuff. You'll hear that coming up in segment number 2 with today's Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll get to that after I tell you about FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. So no matter what game it is, what series it is, if it's if the playoffs or the finals, or like we had the WNBA All-Star break over the weekend, the All-Star game, saw some flag football championships on ESPN over the weekend, like any kind of sports, I'm all into them. So when the sports aren't really sporting like they're supposed to, FanDuel lets me keep in touch. They let me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I got to do is open up the app and dream up any bet anytime I'm in the mood. And for this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. All you got to do is head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. I want you to hear some sound that I heard on First Take on Friday on ESPN, and I've said it many times, regardless if I work for ESPN or not, I'm just not a big First Take guy. Just never have been, never will be, right? It's just not really for me. But every once in a while, it'll catch my attention, especially when there's different hosts on there. And on Friday there was, as a lot of folks are still vacationing and coming back from vacation. So on Friday, Harry Douglas was on it, good friend of mine. Ryan Clark was on it. I consider him a friend as well. Mike Tannenbaum, I know him slightly, former Jets, their GM. He's been now with ESPN for a while. And then Christine Williamson was hosting it. So it all got started when they were talking about Club Shay Shay and Club in the conversation that Devontae Adams had with Shannon Sharp, and Shannon had asked him about where he's ranked as far as wide receivers in the league, and he said, well, I'm number 1. Right, I'm the number 1 wide receiver in the league. So they started out this conversation talking about where Devontae's ranked, and obviously Harry Douglas and Ryan Clark got their thoughts on where they have him ranked in the top 5, top 3, whatever the case may be. And then it led into a conversation. Ryan Clark tells a good story about rookie Brock Bowers and a lot more. So I thought it was a really good conversation, and through the powers that be, I was able to track down the audio version of it so I could bring it to the table. So here it is from Friday's First Take on ESPN. Devontae Adams' conversation is starting off on First Take with Harry Douglas talking about where he has him ranked as far as top receivers in the National Football League. Check it out.
Devontae Adams believes he is the best wide receiver in the NFL over guys like CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and literally everyone else. Adams joined Shannon on Club Shay Shay and said, if you say the best, myself, and you probably go Jefferson after that. HG, I'm going to start with you. Where do you rank Adams among NFL receivers?
I have him top 3, and the reason why he's top 3, I think, is because of his quarterback play. And I hate to sit up here and blame his quarterback, but that's where he is. And I put him at number 3. I have Justin Jefferson at number 1. I have Tyreek Hill at number 2. And then I have Devontae Adams. And it sucks, RC, because the young man is so doggone good at football. But like we just seen on that Netflix series, receiver, we see how frustrated Devontae Adams has been because of the lack of what the quarterback position could do in getting him the football. We know he can go out there and route people up. We know he can beat double teams. We know he can make those remarkable catches. But what good is it if you can't have a guy under center that has the ability to even throw you the football? What I love about Justin Jefferson at number 1, and not saying Devontae Adams can't do this, but we see more so of it from Justin Jefferson. He can beat you short, intermediate. He can beat you deep. He can line up wide. He can line up in the slot. He can line up in the backfield. I like how wiry he is as a wide receiver. He can run every single route on the route tree. That's why I have him number 1. Tyreek Hill at number 2. You play DB. Speed kills. Man. And when you can run a DB out their damn hamstrings, you already have an advantage before you even run a route.
I don't want this. Like, I literally would not want the smoke. Like when you think about Tyreek Hill and the way that he's able to put pressure on every single defender on the entire football field, I think that's been unmatched since Randy Moss and what he was able to do. And I believe Tyreek's different because he's so sudden. Like when you talk to defenders in the league now, they say, man, he gets top speed right now. Or if he catches the football and you don't get your hands on him to tackle him right now, he's out of the gate. I think that's what makes him so special. I do believe that Justin Jefferson is number 1. I believe when you get to number 3, you start talking about Jamar Chase, in my opinion, and Devontae Adams. Those are the 2 guys. But as you mentioned, Jamar Chase has Joe Burrow. And he's able to make plays with someone, one, he's extremely comfortable with, but who also is a top-tier quarterback in this league. Devontae Adams is in the tough spot of aging and not having great quarterback play. There was a time where we felt like he was quarterback proof when you think about who he was at Green Bay right before being traded to Las Vegas. Obviously, the first year in Las Vegas, he plays at an extremely high level as Derek Carr, who wasn't playing great at the time, had a chemistry with him where he can get him the football. last year wasn't the same thing. And so I think for Devontae, it's going to be how do you find a way, whether it's Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell, to still be yourself? On a team with Antonio Pierce that he's proven he wants to be a team that's physical on offense, that runs the football. So now I got to win in play action. Now I have to win against double teams. I have to see if it's not Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker, where I can find my spots to get the one-on-ones. I think that's hard. But what we've seen from Justin Jefferson is this. They know he's getting it. They know nobody else is getting it, and they can't stop him. The historic start to his career is a surprise to everyone, because if they knew, they would have drafted him #1 overall. The amount of combat catches, the run after catch, the route precision and detail, whether it's a stem, a weave, a pressure step, everything that Justin Jefferson does in the route has a purpose. It's very much like we saw from Davante Adams, but it's something about like this wiry, lanky, gum bear-like frame that makes him impossible to cover. And I'm looking forward to see who quarterbacks this year and if he's able to maintain that sort of level of play.
Yeah, I agree. Those are all great points. And Harry referred to the receiver series right now on Netflix. And one of the things that I learned was Justin Jefferson had not missed a game going back to high school until this past year. And what's remarkable to me, again, I go back to greatness, guys. Greatness is making those around you better. This past year, he averaged 107 yards per game with Nick Mullins out there.
Yes.
And to me, that says a lot. And his ability to line up in all those different spots tells you his football acumen, and that puts so much pressure on a defense. But to, again, have 107 yards per game with really, like, backup quarterbacks to me was extremely impressive. And I think the Raiders, to me, in this Davante Adams situation is fascinating. Everyone's like, well, is he going to be with Aaron Rodgers? I think when you look at this, guys, the inverse to me is as plausible. If you have Brock Bowers, Davante Adams, Jacoby Myers, and a good offensive line, that is a tailor-made situation for fill in the blank. Is it Dak Prescott at the end of the season? Is it Matthew Stafford, who's not happy with his contract with the Rams? Like, if I'm Davante Adams, yes, I'm frustrated. I'm still a top 5 receiver. But, gosh, if we could get a frontline quarterback, I think the Raiders on offense and that group of skill players is really interesting to a quarterback who's looking for one more payday.
And Harry will appreciate this. I met Brock Bowers at the rookie premiere out there with the NFLPA, and Michael Rubin throws a party there as well. So we're outside, we're in LA, we're on the rooftop.
You are something else.
Hey, I'm just telling y'all.
You are something else.
I like how he
RC.
said it too.
And Michael Rubin throws a party out there as well.
Did I bet you I've been to a Michael Rubin party?
It was just a party. It's just a party, guys. I was
congratulate.
I was eating hors d'oeuvres, drinking club sodas.
You can wear whatever you want.
You know, looking out over LA.
And you belong.
And I belong there. At least I
You know what I'm saying?
What color was your attire?
I can't even remember that
Was
day.
LeBron
I think I was chilling. No, LeBron wasn't there either. But like the point I'm trying to make is this, guys, and Harry will understand this and what I mean by this more than anybody. Them boys just dripped out, right? It's rookies. They had just got that new money. All them boys had NIL. Everybody dripped out. Brock Bowers walks in with a black Raider polo, gray team issue coaching pants, the Raider Nikes with the emblem on them, and white socks.
Businessman.
That's a man I want on my team.
Businessman.
When he went on his visit, when he was drafted by the Raiders, and AP is walking him around, showing him the building, asking him, what number do you want? You're the first pick. Do you want 19? And he's like, Coach, whatever number you want to give me. And as they're continuing to show him around the building, he said, hey, Coach, can you just show me the field? Can you just let me see the grass? That's the dude I want to draft first. And so when you're talking about the pieces you're adding in Las Vegas, if Brock Bowers is everything that they say he's been in the offseason, everything we saw in Georgia, now that may take some of the pressure off of Devontae where he can go eat. Trey Tucker now ascending and using his speed. Jacoby Myers, who I believe has progressed.
He can play.
Since working
he can play.
with Davante Adams in Las Vegas. They just got to get a quarterback who's capable, and they can honestly make some hay. And so it may not be where we're talking about Davante Adams as the top receiver in the league, but we can see him go out and produce and actually find ways to win, which if you listen to him talk and listen to him speak about greatness and how you say elevate people's play, that's who he truly wants to be.
I think two things. When you talk about Davante Adams and Brock Bowers, I think you can mirror those two together because they have this appreciation for the game.
Yeah.
They don't take the game for granted. And that's all you can ask of if you're a veteran player and you have a young guy coming in, don't take this thing for granted because veteran players want to win now. They don't want to win the next year or the following year. They want the immediacy right there at that moment. So him having that mindset and being that caliber of player, but it also says where he played at too.
Yeah.
University of Georgia. That's how they are at UGA, Kirby Smart, being able to win back-to-back national championships. But Brock Bowers is a diamond in the rough. He's the jack of all trades.
Yeah. Harry, you nailed it. Like, players know, like, hey, we have a chance to win here. And that's why I think one of these quarterbacks is going to look at Vegas and say, like, I want to go there. Like, I could get this team over the hump.
Well, speak on which one, Mike T, because I got one in mind.
Dak Prescott.
Sounds good to me.
Was that what you had in mind?
That's the person I had in mind. Jerry Jones stopped playing.
So I thought that was a really good conversation. I really did. It's funny that, like I said, sometimes or most times that show does not catch my attention. But as I was preparing for my radio show, I happened to be looking up, and then all of a sudden in Studio Q, I saw these, the Raiders symbol. I saw, Devontae Adams, and I was like, okay, wait, hold on, what's going on here? And so I literally had to rewind it just to hear it. And I thought, dang, that was actually some pretty good stuff right there. So I reached out to a couple people and was like, man, what do I got to do to get that audio? And luckily I was able to get that sent over to me so I could bring it to you. And again, I thought it was some really good stuff right there. And excited to see what Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers, what that 1-2 punch could look like. And it even got me thinking of the three-headed monster that the Raiders could have offensively and who that can be. So I actually ended up talking about it on my radio show on Friday. I said Devontae Adams, obviously wide receiver 1. I put Jacoby Myers as a guy that I think is going to go over 1,000 yards or be right around 1,000 yards this year, and then Zamir White from the running back room. But I do have Brock Bowers kind of on the outside looking in, probably around 700 yards, but probably about 5 touchdowns his rookie year. I just think that they're going to make an effort to get him the ball early and often. So, just again, listening to that conversation kind of got the wheels turning and got me thinking about what this Raiders offense could look like if they can get good, consistent quarterback play, which I do believe they will with either Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell and or whatever the case may be. Again, I've said it many times. I think Aiden O'Connell's actually going to win the job and be the starting quarterback coming out of training camp, but that's for him to solidify that. That's not for me to prophesize it, right? We know the suspects. We know the guys that are going to be competing for that job in O'Connell and Minshew. One of the guys will win it. Maybe only one guy plays start to finish of the season. Maybe it's a combination of the both. Who knows? But if the Raiders are going to get to, around 9, 10, 11 wins, where I think that they need to be, especially 10 wins to try to have the opportunity to make the playoffs, they're going to have to get good, consistent quarterback play, as we know. But that's what I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed that conversation that was heard on First Take on Friday on ESPN. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of this show, which is LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. What you need to do is post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We'll start off with a call from Jacob in Hanford. He's calling to talk about a call he actually heard on Thursday's show about Raider fandom and starts talking about Terrell Pryor, his big run he had against the Steelers at the Coliseum, and a little bit more. Here he is, Jacob in Hanford.
What's up, Q? This is Jacob from Hanford. I'm listening to your show on Thursday, and man, just one call, I wish I paid attention to the guy's name, but he's talking about how the Raiders, with the sorry record and everything, we still had games where there was just grit, the team was really fighting. We'd have a 2-10 record, but then we'd knock off a team that was going to the playoffs, and it just didn't make sense. But there was just always you could never count us out because we were never like, I don't know, like the 0-16 Browns. That was never something that was going to happen to the Raiders. The closest we ever got was that Art Shell season, and we still beat the Steelers really well that year. But regardless, he brought up that Terrell Pryor game, man, and I'm in the same boat as you. I remember we moved on from Terrell Pryor, and I was like, why? So quick. It didn't really make sense. And I guess he agreed with the decision, too, because he went on to be a wide receiver later, regardless. But I was actually at that Steelers game. I've been to 5 Raiders games in my life because I'm not financially very well off to where I could be a season ticket guy all the time. That's just not in my realm of possibility. But I've been to 5 Raider games. All of them were in Oakland, and we won all of them. And every time it was during a losing season. So I'm very fortunate and very blessed to have had every game I go to be a win. We beat the Bengals. The game after we benched Jamarcus Russell, we beat the Bengals with Bruce Gradkowski. I was there. The next game, what was it? We beat the Steelers team, right? And then the next game, Derek Carr comes back with a crazy comeback win against the Chiefs, and they win it by throwing 3 touchdowns in the last 3 seconds. I know it doesn't make sense, but that's what happened, all them penalties. I was there in that game. And then I was there when we beat the Steelers in Gruden's first year, 2018, where we almost lost, but then the kicker slips, and he slips on the banana and misses the field goal. I was there for that game. And then we beat the Broncos, I think at the second to last game of the year, Monday Night Football, where we see the longest punt return in history. I was there for that game. I'm very blessed and very fortunate to have been to a lot of games. And I'll say one thing. We've had some pretty bad seasons, but the Raiders, they just have that grit, that historicity about them that's just, you can't count us out, man. It's something to do. I don't know, maybe it's the black and silver. You just see us and it's menacing. But I'm very much looking forward to what AP's going to do for us this year, and I think it's going to be great things. I'm not super enthusiastic like a 10-win season, but I think even if we get like another 8-win season, the future looks bright for Raider Nation. We got to get the quarterback figured out, but let's just be enthusiastic and excited, guys. Go Raiders!
Jacob, thanks for the call. Appreciate you, and that's awesome. It really is, man. Those are some really good games to be at. Sounds like that you're a good luck charm. Anytime you're at the game, the Raiders win. So all that means is I think you need to go to more, right? I think everyone needs to find a way to make sure that Jacob is at more games because, well, when he's at games, the Raiders seem to win. I like that. Jacob, thanks for sharing that story, man. I really appreciate hearing from you. And next up is a text from Hollow in North Cal. He's a new booty. He says, Q, new booty. Just heard the Aaron Rodgers clip. He and Devontae are golf buddies. Devontae just posted some tourney he was playing in. Could Aaron Rodgers possibly be saying he's looking forward to playing golf with Devontae? Appreciate you and Ari. That's Hollow in Northern California. Hollow, thanks for the text. Appreciate you being a new booty. And I mean, he could be talking about anything. And they were playing in those tournaments that were going on in Reno, and they do play golf together. And obviously they're really good friends, but Aaron Rodgers knows what he's doing. He ain't silly, right? I mean, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's out there, dropping little nuggets here and there because he knows that the media is going to eat it up and run with it and turn, into something major, as it was. I mean, last week it was on fire. It was the hottest conversation ever. The good thing is coming up this week, I'm excited that training camp is opening up the rest around the league, and so that won't be the number one conversation. Will it go away? Probably not. Right? Probably not anytime soon, but it won't be talked about. It won't be the number one headline. It won't be what every show is opening up with. Devontae, is he going to? All that's not going to happen. But Aaron Rodgers knows exactly what he's doing. His biggest thing is he better hope that he's healthy. He better hope that his team is doing their job. As Greeny's talking about, well, I can see Devontae being a Jet by Halloween. I can see the Jets being out of it by Halloween too. If they don't get their stuff together, I can see them being out of the mix, and it wouldn't even matter who's on their team by Halloween if they don't handle their business. So, like I said, he knows what he's doing. Everything he does is intentional, and that's fine. Not a big deal. That's why I talked about it, just to let it be known that, hey, there's really not a whole lot to it, right? It just really isn't. So, really trying to shoot it down, before it really gets going too much. But Hollow, thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Hopefully hear from you again. Up next, got a call from T3 Raider Facts. It's been a minute since he called in, but he's calling to talk about 3 quick subjects about the silver and black. Here he is, T3.
Hey, Q, this is T3. Well, now that training camp is ready to kick off in Costa Mesa, I want to chime in on 3 quick items. Number 1, what do I consider to be a successful season for the Raiders in 2024? It has to be the playoffs. I'll repeat, it has to be the playoffs. Having said that, the Raiders need to put up either 10 or 11 wins, and it can happen as long as the Raiders can figure out ways to consistently close out games. The second thing is the defensive back situation. There's a lot of new guys in the defensive backfield this summer, but I don't know how many of those rookies you can count on. You have Jack Jones, Hobbs, and Faison, but Ja'Cory Bennett is really going to have to really step up, as the Raiders may need to dip into that free agent market and bring in a veteran if they don't. Now, as for all the talk about the receivers and Davante Adams, let me say this. Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers both had a lot of success and a lot of continuity together, but Davante never gave Rodgers a Super Bowl, and likewise, Rodgers never took Davante to a Super Bowl. In my opinion, Adams is much closer to getting a ring in Las Vegas than he would with Rodgers in New York, because this will be Aaron's last year in the league, and the playoffs aren't happening for them, in my opinion. So that's it for now, Q. Let's see what training camp brings. And I'll kick it old school and end it like I always used to back in the day. Raider Nation, remember this. Passion always outlives fashion.
T3, it's good to hear from you, my man. Thanks so much. I appreciate you. And for the season to be a success, it's got to be a playoff berth. I think that that's a no doubt about it. I think that everybody in that building will tell you that. So that's I think it's very reasonable, even though, I know they didn't make the playoffs last year. I know they haven't made the playoffs in a while, and when they do make the playoffs, it's once, and then all of a sudden a few years goes by, and then they make it again. They've got to find a way to consistently be a playoff team. There's just no doubt about that. As far as the cornerback room goes, I mean, that's obviously going to be one of the big things we're talking about at training camp. And again, we'll be talking about football activities. Who is it who's going to earn that job across from Jack Jones? That'll be a big talking point. And the Davante conversation is nothing until it is, right? And I don't think that there's a whole lot. It's not going to be something that I'm going to be focused on when we get a chance to talk to him. I think Davante usually talks on Wednesdays when it comes time for for his media obligations. I don't. It's not going to be something that I ask him about. I'm sure he'll be asked once or twice about it, and then it'll be done and over with. But it's not going to be my conversation. My conversation is going to be like, how is this quarterback thing going, and how's the camaraderie being built with the quarterbacks, and how's this offense coming along? Again, an offense that he's very familiar with, as he told us at mandatory minicamp. I don't even have to look down at my play sheet. I know 90% of the of the calls already. So that's really what my focus is on. How is this offense continuing to grow? T3, thanks so much for that call. Appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Colin in North Carolina. It says, hey, Q, it's Colin from North Carolina. I'm originally from upstate New York. I became a Raider fan as a kid because I was playing on the Pee Wee football team Raiders. Also in 2003, I think my first ever Raider game I watched was 2003 when the Raiders beat the Titans in the AFC Championship game. Rich Gannon will go down as one of my all-time favorite players. I'm a big fan of West Coast rap, and that Raiders brand was always being represented. Raiders pretty much have touched every part of my life. Hoping for better Raiders days ahead and can't wait for the return to glory days. That's from Colin in North Carolina. Really good text, my man. And yeah, I was talking about that the other day, how the Raiders were just in lockstep with everything, right? I mean, from music to, lifestyle to obviously sports, dominance on the field, being the winningest franchise in sports history for a long time. Like, they had so much that was going on and so influential in just life. How could you not be a fan of the silver and black? But really good story right there. And yeah, Rich Gannon was fantastic for the Raiders. And it's funny, every time he would play the Raiders as a member of the Chiefs, I always said, man, that guy is a really good quarterback. And so when he wasn't playing, when they put like Elvis Gerbach in, I was like, thank God. Thank God. I ain't got to go up against Rich Gannon, even though Elvis Gerbach still, he orchestrated one of the biggest wins against the Raiders at the Coliseum that, man, drove me nuts. To this day, I still remember that pass from Elvis Gerbach to Andre Bad Moon Rising in the back of the end zone, got behind Eric Turner. Rest in peace to Eric Turner. Scored that touchdown as a walk-off. And I'm at my mom's house, and my boy Corey all of a sudden calls the house. All of a sudden the phone rings as soon as that thing goes final, and I was like, I already know who that is. That's Corey talking trash. Yeah, I don't want to talk. I already knew because it was that bad. But yeah, that's one that that was a heartbreak I'll never get out of my mind. But thanks for that text, my man. It's great to hear from you. Let's get this call in. We got two more. We'll get a call and a text. This call's from Freddie from the 559. He's calling to talk about a conversation he saw on ESPN about Davante Adams' situation that has obviously had a lot of conversation and did not sit well with Freddie from the 559. Here he is.
Hey, yo, what's up, Q? This is Freddie from the 559. Yo, I'm calling. I know I'm watching your show right now saying that you're not going to talk about Davante Adams' debacle anymore. But I kind of just want to chime in. I was watching the show on ESPN, and you have these, hosts talking about do the Raiders really want to be dealing with all the chatter that's going to be going on for the next 6 months? So in other words, I kind of took that as, hey, do you want to be bullied by the New York media for the next 6 months? And to me, oh man, that didn't sit well. You know, they're pretty much not saying don't listen to what Devontae's saying. You've got to listen to the New York media. They're going to bully you for the next 6 months. So you better listen up. Trade this guy away. And that's kind of what I'm getting out of, Boomer Esiason. I think Greeny as well. Basically saying, hey, we're going to bully you until you trade this guy. And that does not sit well with me, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't sit well with a lot of Raider Nation. But we got to weather this storm together, you know. Raider Nation, don't bite into this. We've heard Devontae, we've heard what he said, and let's move forward, man. No one's expecting us to do good this year, and we know we're going to do well. You know, not being optimistic, just going off things that you're seeing from insiders at the Raiders, you know. And I can't wait. I cannot wait for Raider Nation to show the rest of the NFL we're a team to be feared. We're going to smack you in the mouth, man. That being said, go Raiders. Let's go.
Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you, my man. The good thing is that the media can't bully any organization to do anything. Right? I mean, I said that during the draft process when I can't remember, someone called in or texted in. It was, oh, you're talking about this guy or that guy or the other, and the Raiders are going to go make a bad decision because you guys are saying it. I was like, wait, look, man, first of all, if Tom Telesco is listening to the radio station right now and says, well, Q thinks that the Raiders need to go get Terrion Arnold, so I'm going to go do that, then he has no business being in that position. Like, there ain't no way that Tom Telesco or any other front office around the league is going to be pressured into making a decision because the media is talking about it. Like, I get it. It's a conversation that's annoying, and it obviously won't go away, and they are the biggest media market in New York, so they could talk loud, they can yell and scream, they can do whatever they want to do, but they literally cannot bully a team into doing anything. So I wouldn't sweat that. I wouldn't sweat that too much. And again, that's a conversation that'll go away sooner rather than later. And really, it's up to the Raiders to go out there and make some things happen, and then it won't be a conversation. They go out and start winning some games and start up the season. Guess what? They won't be talking about Davante Adams going to another team. They'll be talking about how Davante Adams is helping this team dominate. So that's up to them. That's what they'll do. But Freddie, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. We'll close things out with a text from Stabler's Ghost from the 413. Hey, Q, Stabler's Ghost from the 413. You asked what a successful season for the Raiders would look like. You hit it the nail on the head. Playoffs, like Jim Morrow said. Playoffs? Absolutely. I think with our defense, we are going to win more games than the national media thinks, which is par for the course. I personally see the window at 9 to 11 wins. Like I said, we're going to surprise people. I also feel that O'Connell is going to completely surprise the NFL. Next year, we make the playoff run. As always, Q, thanks for being the voice of Raider Nation. Let's go Raiders. That's from Stabler's Ghost from the 413. And, yeah, I mean, I said when the season, not season, but the schedule dropped that, yeah, I thought 9 to 10 wins was very reasonable. 9 to 11 is probably even a better window. 10 or 11 will get you in the playoffs. I feel very confident saying you get double-digit wins, you're going to get to the playoffs. So that's what their goal should be, and that's what a successful season should look like. Like, they won 8 games last year through all kind of chaos, and that's the best way I could describe it, is all kind of chaos. So if they can win 8 games through that, they sure can win 9, 10, 11 wins, with a regular season and nothing chaotic going on. Obviously, I can't, predict the future and tell you what's going to happen from now and throughout the course of the season. Anything chaotic could happen, but it just feels like the organization is a lot more stable than what we saw last year. So thanks so much, Stabler's Ghost. It's always great to hear from you. Definitely appreciate that feedback. So that's going to do it for today's show. I'm about to hop in the car and head on down to Costa Mesa and get set up for training camp and be able to bring you wall-to-wall coverage, man. So I'm excited about that opportunity, and you should be excited as well as Raider football is just about back. Thanks again for making the Locked On Raiders podcast your first listen every day. You want to get caught up on all the other teams that are on the Raiders schedule, or just want to get caught up on the NFL in general, the Locked On Podcast Network has all 32 teams represented. Got over 200 total shows across the network, different sports, from college to professional, hockey, draft shows, everything, you name it. The Locked On Podcast Network has it. Of course, that's your team every day. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. From Southern California, we'll talk tomorrow. And as always, just win, baby.